welcome to All Things Odd. I'm Dr. Natalie Phillips.
And I'm Dr. Hannah Galloway.
And we have a great topic for you guys today. But before we get there, we're going to put up our YouTube channel here while I share this show out to some of our colleagues as well. So I'll have Dr. Galloway talk real quick about this.
Yep. So, we're looking for new YouTube subscribers. So if you look there, it creates like easier playlists to watch. And then also the thumbnail images are just a little bit easier to sift through. If you wanted to send a video to somebody that doesn't have Facebook, it's just kind of a different platform to look at it. But go to our YouTube, subscribe, and then you can get notifications too when we have a new episode. Typically, we have a new episode every Thursday unless we're traveling or something like that. But try to push out new episodes every Thursday at 12:30.
Yeah, and we're doing pretty good on subscriptions, you guys. And so again, as you kind of look at this, it's really nice and categorized in different playlists. So it's super helpful for people to find and share. And at one point, even when we were doing our show before, there were people that kind of put this up in their waiting room for people to kind of watch and see. And you can kind of pick if you just want to focus on cochlear implants, or if you want to focus on hearing aids, or anything else that we're talking about. So it makes it really easy to do that. So with that, we're going to, I'm just sharing this out a little bit more here. We're going to take this down, and then we're going to introduce our guests here. So we thought today it would be kind of interesting to have some people on, and what we wanted to talk about is audiology practice standards. And so, a lot of people might think, do audiologists even have standards of care across the board? And so we're going to talk to some people who know a lot about audiology practice standards. And so with that, we are going to bring in the current president, Dr. Jennifer Phelan, and Dr. Emily McMahan, the past president of Audiology Practice Standards Organization. So welcome, guys. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks.
Yes, thank you for having us.
All right. So we're going to kick it off today, asking you guys some questions about what is audiology practice standards. And, we do have a website that we can refer people to, but let's kick it off and ask a little bit more about what is APSO. Let's just say APSO. What is it all about?
Well, APSO really is a place for audiologists, but also the general public, even different professions to go to learn about what the standard, or when we think about standards, we think of what all audiologists should be doing. And so, our goal in working and putting together the standards is that we want to be sure that whether you see an audiologist here where I am in South Dakota, or where Emily is in Alaska, that you're getting the same standard of care. We may do things really differently. Our clinical decision may be different. We might approach things a little differently, but we want that standard. We want to know that everyone is getting that same standard of care for the procedure that they're going in for.
And why, don't we have national organizations? So I'm just going to play the devil's advocate. We're going to be the devil's advocate and just kind of ask these questions that we kind of already know, but at the same time, we want to get this information out to audiologists and to our colleagues, and even consumers, to even walk in the door of somebody's practice. And if they have that question on if we have these practice standards, but we have national organizations, and there were some kind of standards floating around. So why have an organization, APSO? Why not do it through one of our national organizations?
Yeah, so currently at this point, none of our national organizations have a standards of care for audiology. We have practice guidelines, which the kind of hierarchy system would be standards, guidelines, best practices. So we've kind of skipped that base level and gone a little higher than that. But one of our biggest disparities is that we are a large country, and every single one of our states has quite different practice standards or guidelines. And so my state licensure is vastly different than Colorado's, which is vastly different than South Dakota's, which is massively different than Illinois and Florida. And so when you have 50 different states plus our territories, and none of them agree on what we can do or can't do, there's a lot of differences that are going around. And so one of these things that we're trying to do is to have a standard of care. That way, it doesn't matter where you receive care. Audiology care should, at minimum, everyone should receive this at minimum.
Mhm.
No one's goal is to practice at a standards level. In fact, your goal should never to be practicing at a standards level. That's nobody's goal. No one should want to be a standard. However, how do you define what's best if you've not even defined what's the most minimum? Because right now our state licensure laws don't agree on that. Our state guidelines don't agree on that. Our national standards or our national guidelines don't agree on that. Now, some of our national organizations do have professional standards. And so that'll be such as upholding HIPAA, upholding professional standards, such as how do you hold yourself? What is your behavior towards your colleagues? What is your behavior towards patient and clinical relationships or relationships with patients? But they're not talking about how we practice audiology. So they're not talking about what do we do during an audiology appointment as far as clinically, but they're more talking about behavioral standards rather than clinical standards. And so that is just an area that the founding members of APSO, which was back in 2017, had been pitching to our national organizations. In fact, they pitched all three big national organizations saying, hey guys, we need these. They don't exist. We would like to help you create them. And they did not have any success in having the national organizations pick this up. And so they decided to do it on their own. And that's how APSO got its start, was they petitioned the national orgs. The national orgs either said like, hey, we see the value, but we don't have time, or we already feel like we don't, whatever that was, it never happened. And so our founders got started and said, that's it, we're doing it on our own. And APSO was started, and we've just kind of taken it over from there.
Yeah. And I like the delineation that you made with guidelines, because that's what our national organization has: guidelines, and then the standards, and then the best practices. So that's a great way to remember it for people who are wondering, like, okay, all these terms are being swirled around and we get confused, and what exactly does it mean? So I like that hierarchical, type of
and I think
definition.
it's important to note, I graduated 7 years ago, so there has definitely been changes in that last 7 years. But when I was going through school, I was handed an ASHA document. I think that was from 1994. That was how to conduct audiometry. And it's, I guess it's guidelines, but there was a lot that wasn't even covered there. And so I remember as a student being like, okay, so this is how we're going to do audiometry, and this is how we're going to do this. Like, well, but what about this, this, and this? What about if this patient has this? There was a lot to be desired in that document. And, especially as a new audiologist, you want to be following, as a student, you're trying to follow things to the book, and you want to make sure that you're doing everything correctly. Yet there was a big gap and as far as like how to do things. And so I think that really highlights the need for this organization, because that national organization had a document, but it just wasn't comprehensive, and it wasn't, completely audiology focused. You know what I'm saying? Those organizations have a lot of other things that they're doing as well. So having something specific is important.
And they do have a lot of other areas that they cover, and we're not even trying to touch 95% of the areas that our big three organizations cover. And so standards is an area that APSO has decided to tackle, and we are just tackling standards. I think another thing, though, Hannah, that you shared is important, is you referenced that it was from, and I know you're throwing 94 out there, but the point of your comment is it was from a while ago.
Yes.
And the point that I'm making onto that is what we wrote into our standards of practice and our bylaws is that they have to be revised every 5 years. And the reason for that revision is important is healthcare changes. Standards change, our knowledge base changes, our technology changes. And so we don't want some new grad or some long-term graduate that's still practicing to feel like, well, I needed an updated reference and it was still from 10, 15, 20 years ago. It needs to be more current data than that, because if we're still practicing 20 or 30 years ago in the exact same manner, are we really providing our patients what is most current? I think that none of us would disagree that no, we've definitely gotten smarter and more knowledgeable and as we age. And it doesn't mean that in 94 that wasn't the best document that existed. It probably was, but we get better, right? We get better, we get smarter, we get more knowledgeable, and we have to continue growing and learning from that. And so already just from our small foundation in terms of how we've started is we've already predetermined that we will be revising them regularly at intervals, not too often because you don't want it to be redundant and without value, but every 5 years because there's enough clinical time frame and judgment that's passed that we can take a good look and see what has changed, what needs to be changed, what should be revised to make sure that we're staying current on current values, current laws, current updates. And so those are things that are important.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I think is really important about APSO is this idea of going back and making revisions, and the fact that this organization is the sole purpose, right? Not that, I mean, there's a lot of work, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done for our profession. And having APSO take on this standards piece allows other organizations to do the other work that needs to get done, because it's going through this process, finding subject matter experts to help write the standards, draft the standards, make sure it gets out for public comment. It is an organization. It is a whole organization with, a board and executive director, and it does take a lot of time. And that's one of the, I think values that APSO has to the profession, is that this is all we do. And because this is all we do, our hope is we're always able to stay up and make sure that our standard, for the profession in the standards we write, that they are right where the evidence is, right? It's not like, oh crud, 10 years have passed, we need to do this, right? We need to get back to this. This is what we do. And so APSO really fills that and is going to be able to do that in a timely manner for the profession.
Yeah. And I like that you touched upon the process of each standard, right? So let's talk about maybe something, because it's been, you said, Emily, since 2017. So we're looking at going into the 6th year, right, of just having APSO around. And this is a purely voluntary organization. I know that a lot of us got involved because it was our own colleagues and friends who started this and thought it was important, right? And so what are some of the standards that have been finished? And talk to us about like what Jennifer had talked about as far as the process of each standard.
Yeah, so let's first answer kind of what the process looks like, just because the process is the same for all of the standards. So we have a subject matter expert committee, which is made up of names that you'll recognize who wrote our books. They are people that are in our coursework. They're people in manufacturing, in private practice, in industry. It's a little bit of everybody because we want this to be as neutral and non-biased of the set of standards as can be. There's also no requirement to be a member. There's no requirement to be a donor. It's meant to be kind of for the people, by the people, because we want this to be as neutral of a document as possible. And so we will put out one information. We reach out to people. We have other colleagues say, hey, reach out to this colleague. And we ask people, would you like to be a part of it? They meet regularly. They are given their topic. They discuss it. There is a lawyer that's involved in this that makes sure that everything is met to a legal standard that we're to hold up in court. In the event that any of us were to be in court or find that we're being held to these standards in court, we want to make sure that all legal subject matter is appropriately handled. We also have everything go out for review. It has public commentary. It's reviewed for our peers, and everything is shared. And then it kind of goes to the next set where it is reviewed again, and then we publish the standards. It's a lot to wrangle a bunch of providers across 5 to 6 time zones who all are still practicing in whatever area of the field they are, whether it's in academia or in practice or in manufacturing. The 3 standards that we currently have published, we have our general intake standard, we have adult and geriatric hearing aid fitting, and we have pediatric hearing aid fitting. The reason we tackled those 3 first is they impact the most number of people through everyone's clinics universally, regardless of the type of office that you work in. Adult and peds hearing aid fittings and intakes, we all can agree we use those in some way, shape, or form. Yes, there will be a small subset of audiologists that don't do any hearing aid intake, but that's a low impact in our field versus a large impact in our field, which is why we went for what has the largest impact across the field of audiology. And I think we would all agree that hearing aids, adult and pediatric, kind of is the biggest piece that unifies all of us. And so we started with those 3 standards, first the intake, then adult geriatric, and then pediatric hearing aid intake, so that we had something that covered almost all providers that are currently practicing audiology.
I love that. And it's smart too. And I love that you go back and you talked about having these looked at every 5 years, right? And to review, because it's important too. So not only did you start kind of more broad based, but now we're going to be able to adjust this also as we go through the next 5 years, right? Okay, so then what's on the dock for the next few? Like what are some of the current standards that are being looked at and worked on?
Almost finished is diagnostic hearing examination for adults. That's almost out for peer review, I believe. That should be very upcoming and ready for peer review. And then, Jen, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe PEDS is in subject matter expert.
Yep, PEDS is in, yes, the pediatric is in subject matter expert, correct.
So we don't have, that is not ready for peer review, but it is in process. And then I can tell you that 2 other ones that are in the process of gathering the SME groups are infection control and cerumen management. So those are also 2 others that are actively in the gathering the subject matter experts. So now that when we first started, we did 1 intake, or we did 1 standard at a time because we didn't have the process. It was confusing. But now that we've got a pretty good flow, we're able to have multiple of these working groups happening at a time, because there's not a lot of crossover necessarily, because there doesn't need to be. The people that are experts in this area aren't necessarily experts over here. And that's where John Coverstone, who's our executive director, has just absolutely done a fantastic job, because he oversees those working groups and those subject matter experts and makes sure that he's the facilitator in these. And he has just really been able to oversee and keep them moving and keep things going. And all of this that we do is totally volunteer. So I don't even, as past president, yes, there's a lot of hours that go into it, but nothing compared to what John's hours have been over the years. This is truly a labor of love that he has done for this profession. But yeah, so right now we've got 2 actively very much in progress, 2 in the beginning stages of in progress. And I won't share what's coming up next, but do know that we already have the next several already decided, but we want to get the next 2 already in process, and then the next areas will start going. So it's a pretty fluid and futuristic group, in the sense that when Jen and I were in transition from my presidency to her presidency at the end of 2022, we had our visioning plan for 2023, and our, at the time, 2022 board and heading into 2023 board had some really nice visioning goals. And we've just been kind of continuing that torch, and that is the same from the 2021 boards transitioning to 2022. We've seen those come to fruition, and it's a small but mighty group. And it's been nice to see what we actually can accomplish when you have a group of like-minded professionals that have one unified goal, and everyone working towards watching this come to fruition.
Yeah, awesome. You know, and you've mentioned a couple things of people like getting involved, and that it doesn't, take a lot of commitment or even sponsoring or donating. I'm going to pull up the website so that we can talk about how audiologists can get involved, because you had also mentioned that you have a lawyer, right? And you have legal things that it goes through. So it has to cost some money. And so I wanted to pull up the website here in just a second here, just so that we can kind of see, there might be people out there that like, they don't even know that the website is there, or there's also a Facebook group too, right? And so I wanted to be able to pull up the website and maneuver around it in case that you guys wanted to talk about it real quickly and show people how to kind of get involved and what types of needs you guys have for other audiologists.
Yeah. So thank you for pulling up the website. I think one of the biggest things, you can see across the top, there's information about who we are. And then next to it is membership. And that really is a big piece to it. Membership really is how you can help and support. You definitely could donate, but being a member, with your membership, because this is not, you have to be a member to get the standard, right? That's not the point. The standards you can find on the website really, really easily. This is not, we're not a club, but obviously, yes, we do. There is, monetary things that are a part of this, and being a member is really how you can support those. That really is probably the biggest way, because if you're a member, it's $50 a year, and our hope is that you would continue to be a member, and you would continue to pay those membership dues. In terms of being, if you have an interest or you want to be on a group, let us know. Let us know through contacting us. We do have a Facebook group. If you have an area that you are interested in, hey, have you thought about this as a standard? Or hey, I'm really interested in being a subject matter expert in this area. That's how honestly, sometimes when, pulling SMEs, we're like, okay, who do you know? Who do you know? And that's why it's so great to have such a diverse group. The other things we're always talking about is we are always talking about members being, how can they volunteer? What, small bit of time can they help us with in terms of, maybe helping with the Facebook page, or, when we go to conferences and we table, being able to have our members be a part of that is really great. But one of the things that's very, very important to the organization, no matter what, is that the standards are out there. Right. The standards are out there. We want, whether you're a member or not, we want you to review them. We want to hear your feedback, and then we want you to use them, reference them. If they're there to be available to people in the field.
This past year, when we were in St. Louis at AAA, and we will be in Seattle for AAA again. So if you're going to be attending AAA, stop by the APSO table. We had multiple professors from school stop in and pick up our standards to say they were going to share those with their students. We can start this from our young audiologists and just kind of raise them up at this level, which it's always easier to learn and grow with that rather than change behaviors down the road. But yeah, like Jen was saying, this is totally inclusive. It's not exclusive. If you can't afford the $50 or you don't want to do the $50, they're right there. They're for anyone to join. This all got started by many of our founders throwing in their own money and being able to pay for all of this out of their own pocket. I do believe we have fully reimbursed all of them at this point, which is also exciting because we're a small, low-head over organization. It's nice to be able to pay back debts. We do keep costs very low overhead, but things like legal fees are important and not areas that we want to skip out on. But yeah, if you do have questions, please let us know. We would love. The more the merrier. Even if you don't think you want to be a member, but you'd love to be a participant, please let us know. I would say one area that we would love help on is just helping to spread the word. It's a pretty benign request. It doesn't take a lot of action or activity, but join the Facebook group, share it, get the information out there, because there are only so few of us that are a part of this. And so just one new person learning about it each day and sharing it to their network of people is that much more exposure. So if you take nothing else away from this other than, oh, I didn't know you existed, let me share this with my colleagues, right there, that is the best ask that we can do. And if any of you are feeling so inclined to help with the $50 donation, of which you then become a member, that's even more exciting. But just honestly, the biggest ask would be join us, whether that be just at no cost to the Facebook group and support us from afar, or join us at the $50 group and become a member to help us on that end of things. But share this with your friends. This will benefit us all in the long run. We are in friendly talks with the big three organizations. They know we're here. We all are in good communications. This is not something secretive. It's not something backdoor. We are in good communications with all three of our big organizations. And the ultimate goal is, once we get these finished, is that all three governing bodies are going to be, the end goal is to adopt what these standards are looking for. So this isn't just a small group of providers doing something. The ultimate goal is that all three organizations are going to be incorporating these in so that we have some unified standards. So, this is something it's small right now, but it's growing larger. It's going bigger. We've got big goals and we're here to stay. So we'd love you to join us on the early end of things rather than at the end. And everyone on the board, we're always happy for you to reach out to us and chat with us or let us know what questions you have. And like Jen said, I may have no idea that you exist or love a certain subject, so please let us know. It's always hard to fill those subject matter expert groups if we don't know someone has a passion in something. And the best people that we can get on those boards are people that are passionate. People that are passionate care about why we're writing them. They have the best insight to why we're writing them. And the better quality of standards that we can produce is just that much better of documents that we're going to be able to produce, which benefits all of us equivocally. So, let us know on that. And we'd love to have you join us in whatever capacity that looks like for you.
Well said.
Yeah, and I think we had you guys on the show a couple years ago, and at that point, I didn't even know that APSO was its own separate organization. I was thinking it was one of like the subcommittees from one of the national organizations, and so I think it's easy for people to think like, oh, well, I'm paying my AAA dues, and so that's supporting this. And it's not that they're not supporting our profession, because they 100% are working on a whole bunch of things. But just to know that this $50 just to APSO is something totally separate, because I'm probably not alone. And that when you go to renew your professional dues at the end of the year, you're like, this is so much money. Like I'm so much. Okay, okay, adding all this on, it's so much money for them to keep track of my CEUs and stuff. So it would be easy for me to say another $50, but knowing that it's totally separate and it's not getting filtered through the organizations, and it's just audiologists who have all of our best interests in mind, at least for me as a young professional, that means a lot. Because I know that the money is being handled in a different way, just on a smaller scale of like keeping this website going, making sure these standards are happening. And so, I mean, we all might need legal protection one day if we all had to, go to trial and say like, no, I did.
Never need it. But if I need it, I would love to know that I have a document to say, I followed this, I did what I'm supposed to do. Because right now, if I were to end up in court and say that it were to be adult diagnostics, I have nothing. I have nothing to stand on. Whereas our physician counterparts, our nursing counterparts, they all have a clinical standard of care that they can say, per my standard of care, I did these things. So I hope none of us end up in court. I hope none of us need that. But I like the cover your behind mode of, if I need it, I have it. I know I've done it. But yes. So we do appreciate that also. But yes, at the end of the year, you're just like, click renew, hurry up and do it. Let me get off the screen.
Yeah.
But yes, this is purely to keep the website going and purely to pay the legal fees. Keep these things just moving. Everyone that is an active participant is 100% volunteer. Even our attending AAA is on our own dollar. So, like, I attended AAA in St. Louis, 100% of my own costs, from my flight to my hotel to my everything. That was all a me cost. APSO did not pay for any of my costs to attend that. Whereas, and this is not a negative, but in larger organizations, they generally send people as representatives. We are such a tiny organization that we do not have the dollars to do that. And we all agreed whomever was going would pay for their own way. And then we're representing Audiology Practice Standards org, but we're going to pay for our own selves to be present. So just in full transparency, even things such as, hey, we are at AAA, but I paid for myself to be there. Audiology Practice Standards dues did not pay for me to be able to attend this conference, things like that. Because I think that's important to know, where did your $50 go?
Yeah. Right. Yep. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to take that off so people can kind of see your names again. And then also what I wanted to do was put this back up. So it's the contact form on the website. So the website is audiologystandards.org. This is the contact form, and you've heard the call to actions, right? And so it is, reach out to APSO if what you heard was interesting, or if you've got some expertise or passion about a certain part of audiology, because we're always looking for, I say we're because technically I'm on the board too. Sorry, I like that. But looking for subject matter experts as well. And just kind of any other questions that you might have that came up from either this show, or if somebody shared it with you. I put it in our own audiology groups that there's a lot of people there. But you guys made some great points, and I just wanted to make sure that people had that website of audiologystandards.org and the contact form to get involved.
And the Facebook page. The Facebook page is very easy as well. It's just APSO. It's a private group. but it's just so that it's a whole lot easier to be an admin on a private group. That is really honestly the only reason, but there is information on there as well.
Yeah, so this is going to sit in our YouTube channel, on our social media channels. It's going to be shared into the audiology groups. But again, if you think that you can be a subject matter expert, if you can share this out to other audiologists that might want to get involved as well. And like Dr. Galloway said too, like she didn't even know that it was something separate, but this is voluntary. And so everybody that's working hard on this, that's the call to actions, is we need your help to get the word out. We're also going to be, here I go again, and but we're also going to be at AAA at a booth. So if you have any questions and you happen to wander by, like stop and say hi. And if you have questions like, what is this all about? Stop and we can talk to you all about what APSO is. And so again, hopefully this helps get the awareness out of what APSO is doing and all the good work. Thank you to our founding I was going to say fathers and but professionals that has started this group because there's a lot of work still to be done. And so we definitely have those call to actions that we need everybody to be involved. So hopefully we can get more people involved.
And thank you, John Coverstone, for making this your life's work. Because
one of the life's work.
Yeah, exactly.
John, tell him thank you. He has certainly put in more hours than any of us can add up at this point.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you both
for having us.
Yes,
yeah.
thank
Thank you both for your time as well. And hopefully we'll get this out to the masses and see if we can get more people involved and we can get this going even faster. So thank you guys.
Thank you so much.